Hey everyone. You know, I was just reading a topic from a new member at the Sega forums, and he was asking basically, and obviously this is an idea even I've thought about before, and I think I've even mentioned. But basically, it's an idea that I guess he's been messing around with in his head for a while, and that is, what story arcs out of the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book, the Archie comic book, uh, would you like to see, or do you think could be adapted into an animated movie? Now, he did mention that he saw the Killing Joke trailer, the trailer for the Killing Joke. And like I talked about in that video, pretty much that's just kicked the door down for anything that's possible. Now, he mentioned some story arcs, if you will. He mentioned some story arcs. And he even put a poll up. The story arcs, he said he the story arcs he put here, he says the poll question is of these arcs I've chosen, and this is the new user Wales Bing Whale Ping Davis uh, basically said in the first post, one of the first posts, put a poll out and asked of the arcs he has chosen, which do you think would do the best as an animated movie? And he's listed The Endgame, Sonic Adventure 2.5 Alpha, which was that little short story, The Iron Dominion, the Sonic Mega Man Worlds Collide crossover, Sonic 175 to 177, which I think is Robotnik's Revenge or something like that. I'm not really sure. The Urjak Reborn Saga, Return to Angel Island, Genesis, or more. Now, I would have to say more because I'm just going to go with that as a poll request, and obviously that's obviously getting the most votes. Votes, easy for me to say. Okay, so basically, this poll will close on the 16th of August, but apparently, in the lead right now is the more or etc. option, which basically means more options, more stories out there that could be chosen. And trailing it is the Worlds Collide crossover, and currently tied in third is Endgame, the 175 to 177, Genesis, and the Iron Dominion. Yeah. Now, he does mention that there would be one obstacle standing in the way of some of these being adapted, and that is the fact that certain characters, due to the Ken Penders lawsuit with Archie Comics and Sega, cannot be used. Now, just because characters cannot be used doesn't mean you can't adapt it. I'll give you a good example. And Wales Ping Davis, I hope you're listening. You see, Endgame, for example, let's just say for the moment, for sake of argument, let's say Archie Comics and Sega made an agreement with, let's say, oh, I don't know, um, Sony to promote the movie coming out in a few years. Let's say they made a deal with Sony, and let's say they made a deal with the animation studios that did the Marvel animated films. You know, the Iron Man, the hold on, let me check. As I was saying, let's say they um, were to make an agreement with Sony, and in contact with Sony, maybe make an agreement with Madhouse Animation, the anime studio that did the recent Marvel team up, Marvel Avengers films like Black Widow and Punisher and Captain America and Iron Man and Hulk, or even their own animation division, which I think is MLG Productions. That's Marvel, I should say. But anyway, you get the idea. But basically, let's say they were able to work with a company like, let's say, Madhouse, which is, like I say, is an anime studio, or work with a company maybe associated with Marvel, maybe its own deal, like MLJ Productions, or what have you, and get a movie made. I could see something like, let's say, Endgame being adapted, because as I was trying to say there, as I was trying to say moments ago, you take a look, for example, at something like Superman Doomsday. We all know the Doomsday arc originated throughout multiple issues in DC Comics before culminating in Superman 75. With that said, we know there was a lot more other characters involved. We know there was the Justice League. We know I think there were several members of the Justice League, groups of the Justice League. We know, I think, Wonder Woman or Batman, someone were involved, stuff like that. We knew there were more characters that were in play in the original comic book presentation. And when DC and Warner Brothers decided to make Superman Doomsday into an animated film, the first one to be exact, they basically didn't hold back on the violence. Of course, it earned its PG-13 rating. But they also realized that because this Doomsday arc was such a massive arc, that there was no way they could adapt it the way it was told in the comic books. And remember, they were just starting out with the original animated universe. So they loosely adapted it to where you did have the death of Superman, you did have some similarities, you did have some almost panel for panel remakes or reenactments in the film and stuff like that. You did have similar, like I said, you did have almost like panel for panel remakes at times, but throughout a majority of it, it was basically a looser adaptation. It was a looser adaptation. I mean, yeah, he killed Doomsday the same way he does. Well, he doesn't kill him by taking him up into space in the comic. He basically is like the two fatal blows coming to pass. So I have to read the comic again, but point is, Endgame can be done. They would just have to, do it in a way where certain characters' moments would be taken aside. It's like certain characters you wouldn't be able to use them. You'd have to replace them. You'd have to bring in Bobby. You'd probably have to bring in a new character, just an original character, to fill that void, or maybe take an established character and put him in that position. But more so, you'd have to go with an original character to fill the void of someone like, say, Jeffrey St. John. Now, with that said, you might also say, well, what about the other characters that were in play, like Drago and Hershey? Same thing there. You'd have to bring up some new characters maybe to fill those voids. And that's probably the best scenario you got, or just avoid that situation altogether. True, it may not be panel for panel, word for word, scene for scene, like in the comics, but still it would be basically the same story, just certain things left out, maybe due to legal reasons and due to the fact that it's a adaptation. It's not a full-on adaptation like, let's say, the Killing Joke's going to be. It's not a full-on adaptation like Dark Knight Returns almost was, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the point is, it But the point is, it can be adapted. Just a few things would have to slightly be altered. Same thing with 175 to 177. I think the Eggman's Revenge or something like that. I call it Robotnik's Revenge, and I do apologize. But basically, Eggman's Revenge. Same thing there. You would have to adapt it to a point to maybe you'd have to bring in certain game characters or maybe certain characters that have been brought into the comic recently to play the roles of characters that are no longer available. So that would be the only change in scenario. Um, Worlds Collide, and I'll even throw it in there, Worlds Unite. Those are two crossovers that I would like to see, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, would like to see happen. But it would be both on Sega and Capcom's end to try to make it happen, because if you try to make it happen and neither side agrees to it, it's not going to happen. But I would like to see it happen. And those are the only two I think that you don't have to worry about changing anything up really at all, because you can adapt them almost page for page, scene for scene, word for word almost. You could do that. Now, would they have to trim it down to maybe 70, 80 minutes? Absolutely. But it's still, those are the kinds of stories that can be adapted word for word, scene for scene, page by page. Now, I think probably the best one that they could do, which falls into the more slash etc. category, that was chosen which was one of the polls to choose to vote on, which I did. I think one of the stories that falls in that category is Countdown to Chaos, because I look at it this way: they could put wording in front of before the movie starts, just like some movies do. Prince of Egypt did it. Kind of explaining that, some liberties and everything were taken, but this is basically the Exodus story of Moses and all that adapted with some liberties taken. Now, with that said, they could put a disclaimer or put something up similar to that saying this movie takes place at the beginning of a restart of basically they could come out with a wording, a disclaimer or something like that saying that this story takes place as a reboot for Sonic, his friends, and the world they live in. For the old world that they once lived in is now no more. And you can go from there. And you could even say, and if you want, and you could even have them add at the end of that wording before the movie starts, if you want the full story, check out issue, check out the crossover between Sonic and Mega Man. And that's all they'd have to do, from a legal standpoint, is just mention Mega Man, just say, check out the crossover of Sonic and Mega Man, check out the Sonic crossover Worlds Collide to get the full story. And that, and there you go. They could say, check out the graphic novel, Sonic crossover Worlds Collide to get the full story, and there you go. They could put a disclaimer, some kind of wording explaining what they're about to see, because it may not make sense, but still, Countdown to Chaos, to me, would be a great adaptation, because it somewhat would reintroduce not just Sonic to that older audience, but it would also reintroduce characters like Tails, Sally, Bunny, Rotor, Antoine, to us as well, at the same time introducing them for the first time to the newer fans. Because this basically, when you think about it, Countdown to Chaos was exactly that. It was introducing our established characters in a more familiar game-like environment and style to the newer fans. And I think Countdown to Chaos, if they wanted to do an animated film to help promote the movie coming out in 2018, that this would be the best one to do it with. This would be the best story to start out with. Now, again, My obvious choice is for them to contact people like Madhouse Entertainment, Madhouse Animation, the anime studio that worked on the Avengers, the Marvel Avenger movies, like I say, Black Widow and Punisher. Get with them, or check out MLJ, or MLG Productions Animation Studio. There, check them out. Try to get in contact with someone. Maybe even go with Cookie Jar Entertainment. Try to get them to do try to bring in hire some people, some freelancers to do feature film quality like animation, or at least animation style similar to what you would see in a movie. But to me, countdown. But getting back to what I was saying, the reason I mentioned them is because I know just by looking at the animation, they could do a phenomenal job with these films. The people that worked on the animated Invincible Iron Man movie definitely can work. Could definitely work out. Could definitely work out by doing a Sonic, by being the animators behind a Sonic animated film. I could definitely see that. Now, one other story I think they'll have to adapt is the one we're currently in right now. And yeah, it's a long one, and they're going to have to shorten it to its main points, maybe to the ending of it. But I think if they were to do their interpretation, and you know what? Take an example from Warner Brothers, spread it out across two DVD Blu-ray release, spread it out between two DVD Blu-ray HD digital HD releases um, when it gets released. Like do part one in one set and do part two in another. Do something like that. Then do what Warner Brothers did and do like maybe a deluxe edition. So that way you can get a lot of the main points out there, and you could at least get a majority of that story contained within. I mean, when they did that with Dark Knight Returns, I was kind of surprised, but then I realized that the reason they did this with Dark Knight Returns is because you got two separate stories you were telling, and these two separate stories needed their own individual moments, their own individual movies. And when Warner Brothers brought it out as a deluxe edition and basically put both movies on one Blu-ray and DVD, I think um, it worked out perfectly because you could watch the ending of the first half of Dark Knight Returns, which was part one, and it flows right into part two. And the only thing they change up is saying, 3 days late, 3 months later from the timeline. So, uh, to me though, like I said, I think honestly, is the honest truth. I think honestly, they could do that with Shattered World Crisis if they wanted to adapt it. They could do that. It would work. You could expand it over two individual Blu-rays and then maybe put them all together on one deluxe edition, and it would work. Heck, you can even go further than that and go 3 or 4 Blu-rays over the span of a couple months, and then leading up to maybe the release of the movie, and then compile them together into maybe a 2 Blu-ray set. Here's the first half of the movie, here's the second half. Or put them all in one movie. It would work. I really think it would, but I think the most logical way to go is to go the two-part route that like Dark Knight Returns did with their that Warner Brothers, I should say, Warner Brothers and DC did with the Dark Knight Returns animated adaptation. Go in that two-part route. Do one release 1 month, and then maybe a month or two later do the next release, and then around that same time do a deluxe edition so that you get it all in one package. And I think Shadow World Crisis right now would be the best one after it's all said and done, would be the best one to adapt because you got so much going on, so much main story arcs and stuff going on. It would work. And you would have, and true, you would have to focus on the main story elements. But you could still throw in tidbits of who they meet, how they get the Gaia keys, how they get the Chaos Emeralds. You could do that and it would work. But overall, overall, as a reply to him, as a reply to Whale Ping Davis, as far as I'm concerned, uh, those are just my thoughts of what ones I think can be adapted and how I think they can be adapted. And I also think, and also my thoughts on who I think animation wise from Madhouse, the anime studio, the animation anime studio that did the Punisher, Black Widow, Iron Man, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Avenger movies, animated movies, as well as the animation studio behind the Invincible Iron Man and movie that came out around the time the second one did, the live action one that is. So to me, those are the animation studios I definitely think you should look into. You could probably look into the feature film division or the full length animation division, animated movie division that works with DHX, easy for me to say, and see what you can get from them. And really, that's all I have to say about it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Sorry, this went over 20 minutes, but just thought I'd get this off my chest, kind of give my thoughts. I mean, it takes a while just to even talk about how you feel which stories could be rightfully adapted, and basically what animation studios you think could work with it. So let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. Video responses are greatly appreciated. And again, I honestly look at the Marvel, I'm not Marvel, but I look at animation studios like the one that worked on the Invincible Iron Man and the one that worked on the Punisher Black Widow Avengers Assemble animated movie, the Madhouse people. I think those would be great studios to look into for the animation quality for the movie, and maybe look at the feature film, the animated movie division for DHX or whoever they work with, and see what you can get from there. So that's all I'm going to say, folks. Let me know down below again what you think. And again, I apologize for this going long, and I'll talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care. Comments are welcome. Sorry about that.